If you've been playing around with Node-RED, you've probably noticed there's a lot of nodes in that palette. And if you're anything like me when I first started, you probably felt pretty overwhelmed when you were dropped right into that scary blank canvas. In this 3-part series, we're going to be breaking down every single core Node-RED node, what it does, when you'd use it, and for the trickier ones, I'll show you exactly how they work. This is part 1, where we're covering the everyday essentials, the common nodes and the function nodes. These are the building blocks you'll use in basically every flow you create. So go grab a coffee, I'll get one too, and then we'll get into it. Let's kick things off with the common nodes. These are your basic utility nodes, the ones that trigger flows, help you debug, and keep things organized. Firstly, the Inject node. Think of this as your start button. The Inject node can trigger a flow either when you click its button manually, or, and a lot of people don't know it can do this, on a schedule you set up. You can configure it to fire every second, every minute, every 20 minutes, only on a Thursday, whatever you need. You can also set what it sends out, a timestamp, a string, a number, whatever. Basically, it's how you kick things off. I use these things all the time for testing flows. Just click the button and you're off to the races. But they're also brilliant for scheduled tasks, like every morning at 8 AM, turn the coffee machine on. Simple, but absolutely essential. The Debug node is your best mate when it comes to building flows. All it does is display messages in the debug sidebar, but thanks to this little dude, you can see what's actually happening in your flows. By default, it shows message.payload, but you can configure it to show the entire message object or any specific property. If you're coming from a programming background, this is basically the console logging method. So when you're building a flow and something's not working, just chuck a debug node in there and see what's actually being passed around. 9 times out of 10, it'll show you exactly what's going wrong. You can also enable or disable debug nodes so they don't spam your console once you're finished troubleshooting. This is super handy, as you can just leave the debug node in a flow that you think you may need to troubleshoot from time to time, but only have it output the debug when you actually need it to. The complete node is a bit more niche, but it's really useful when you need it. It fires when another node in your flow finishes its work. Not all nodes support it, but for the ones that do, like function nodes or HTTP request nodes, this lets you detect when they're done. Again, if you're coming from a programming background, this is basically a callback. So if you've got a long-running process that doesn't have a direct output, a complete node can trigger something else once that process wraps up. For example, maybe you're processing a large file and you want to send a notification when it's finished. A complete node has got you covered. The catch node is basically error handling for your flows. When a node throws an error, the catch node is the thing that intercepts it. You can configure it to catch errors from specific nodes or just catch everything in the flow. Once it catches an error, it outputs a message with all of the error details, so you can log it, send yourself an alert, or trigger some recovery action. It's like a try-catch block in programming. Instead of your flow just failing silently, you can handle exceptions gracefully and actually do something useful with them. I generally have at least one catch node in any production flow. It saves a lot of headaches. The status node monitors node status changes. Lots of nodes in Node-RED display a little status message underneath them, like connected or disconnecting or some sort of custom text. The status node outputs a message whenever that status changes. So for example, if you've got an MQTT node that shows connected normally, but then shows reconnecting when it drops, the status node can catch that and let your flow react, maybe send you a notification. The status info comes through in the message instead of the usual payload, so you get the text, the color, the shape, all of it. It's really useful for monitoring the health of your connections. Link nodes are brilliant for keeping your flows organized. They let you connect different parts of a flow, or even different flows, without having wires going all over the place. You've got a link out which sends a message and link in which receives it. They act like invisible jumpers between flows. When you select a link node, you'll see where it connects, but otherwise it keeps your canvas clean. There's also link call, which is a bit fancier. It lets you call a flow like a subroutine and then get a result back. So you can build reusable flow logic and just call it whenever you need it. I actually only discovered these existed when I was researching the script, so I'm really excited to use one now. If you've got complex flows, link nodes are an absolute no-brainer for readability. And finally, for the common nodes, the comment node. This one's dead simple, it's just a label. It doesn't affect your flow at all, it's purely there for documentation. You could drop it onto a canvas to explain what a section or a node or an entire flow does. Basically just leave yourself notes. It supports markdown formatting too, so you can make it look all nice. Honestly, good comments make flows so much easier to understand when you come back to them 6 months later, or when somebody else has to work on them. Don't skip the comment nodes, future you will thank you. Okay, let's move on to the function nodes. These are where the real processing happens. Transformations, logic, routing, all that good stuff. Let's start with the big daddy, the function node. This node lets you write custom JavaScript to do basically anything. You get the incoming message object and then you can manipulate it however you want. change properties, create new messages, route to multiple outputs, whatever you fancy. If the built-in nodes can't do what you need, the function node probably can. You can do calculations, you can do conditional logic, you can do loops, you can do interfaces with JavaScript libraries. If you can do it in JavaScript, you can do it here. Now I'm going to show you a really simple example of how to use one. Here's one I made earlier. So this is a really basic example of what the function node can do. It's actually incredibly powerful. I'm going to show you two basic examples. The first one, literally, you can just take a timestamp from an input node. We don't even care about the timestamp because we're immediately going to use the function node to transform what's in the function node and just replace it with a string saying hello from the function node, and then send that to a debug node. So when we click it, we get hello from the function node in the debug panel. Simple. Slightly more useful one. This is going to take an inject node, but with a value of 21. We're then going to do some maths to double it and output the double value, which is the answer to life, the universe, and everything. So I'm sure you can see how powerful they are, but remember, if there's a simpler node that can do the job, just use that instead. Function nodes are brilliant, but they can make those harder to read if you overuse them. The switch node is your decision maker. It routes messages to different outputs based on rules you can define. To go back to programming, it's basically an if-else statement, or more accurately, it's a switch case statement. You set up rules like if message.payload equals 0, go out port 1, or if message.payload is greater than 100, go out port 2, and so on. Each incoming message gets evaluated and then gets sent to whichever output matches the rule. You can have as many outputs as you want. For smart homes, these are perfect for routing things based on, say, device type or message. I use them for my buttons, so each button action has a different output in the switch node. Incredibly handy. The change node is brilliant for simple message transformations without actually needing to write code. You can set, change, move, rename, or delete message properties using a simple UI. For example, you can set a new topic, do a find and replace on text of the payload, rename a property, all without touching the function node. You can even chain multiple operations in one chain node. So set this, then change that, then delete the other thing. It all happens in order. Basically, any straightforward message modification, use a change node. It's faster and cleaner than writing JavaScript. The range node scales numbers from one range to another. Say you've got a sensor reading from 0 to 1023, but you want that as a percentage from 0 to 100. The range node does that maths for you. You just specify the input range and the output range, and it calculates the proportional value. You can also clamp values and round them if you want. It's really handy for normalizing sensor data or converting units. For example, you can use it to map temperature readings or convert analog inputs to percentages. If you've ever done Arduino programming, it's just like the map function. The range node is slightly confusingly named, but basically it scales numbers from one range to another. The template node generates text from a template using mustache syntax. You create a template with placeholders and then the node substitutes the values from your message. For example, hello payload.name, the temperature is payload.temp.degrees. When that message comes through, it fills in those values and then outputs the formatted text. You can create emails, reports, HTML, JSON, whatever text format you need. And if you're generating JSON or YAML, it can even pass it back into an object for you. This can be super useful for creating formatted outputs with dynamic content. The delay node does exactly what it says on the tin. It delays messages. You can use it in two main ways. In delay mode, it holds each message for a set time before passing it on. In rate limit mode, it throttles the message to a maximum rate, like no more than 5 messages per minute. This is brilliant for preventing floods. Say you're calling an API that only allows, say, 10 requests per minute. Chuck a delay node in rate limit mode, and you're sorted. Or you can use it to space out actions or debounce rapid sensor readings. It's a very handy little node. The trigger node is a versatile timing node. It typically sends one message immediately, waits a bit, and then sends another message. For example, when input arrives, output on. Then 30 seconds later, output off, unless another input resets the timer. You can also set it to repeatedly send messages at intervals until stopped, a bit like a metronome. I use this for things like turning devices on, then off after a delay, or triggering alerts if no data arrives within a certain time. It's really flexible for timing sequences. The exec node lets node red run system commands on your machine. Basically like typing commands in a terminal. So you could call a Python script, run an ls command, basically execute any CLI program. It has 3 outputs, one for standard output, one for errors, and one for the return code. As you might imagine, this one's extremely powerful, so be careful. It's basically Node-RED's gateway to the host operating system, so use it carefully. Also, make sure Node-RED has permission to run what you're trying to execute, and be aware of any possible security implications. The last one is the filter node. This used to be known as the report by exception or the RBE node for you old school Node-RED nerds. Why are you watching this video? You already know this stuff. It filters out duplicate or insignificant values. In basic mode, it blocks messages with the same payload as the last one. So if your sensor keeps sending 100, 100, 100, 100, it only passes through the first one. 100. You can also set a dead band, i.e. only pass through changes greater than a certain amount, or a narrow band, only pass through values outside a certain range. Note, this is the term for this sort of thing, but it's not what the property is called in Node-RED. I'll do you a demo in a sec so you don't get lost. This is brilliant for cutting down noise. If you've got a temperature sensor that fluctuates by 0.1 degrees constantly, you probably don't care. So you can set a dead band of 2 degrees and it'll only report significant changes. Let me show you a quick demo of this one because it's really, really useful. This one is actually simpler than it looks. So we'll start with the block unless changed one. So literally we'll say block unless value changes and then look at the message.payload. So if we click 20, you will see the output because the first time you click anything, you will get an output. It's got nothing to compare it to. If we click 20 again, nothing. We can click that as many times as we like, but there's no value change, so nothing happens. Click 21, yeah, that's different. 22, that's different. 23, that's different. 23 again, no, nothing's changed, so we don't get anything. Now, if we disable this one and enable the dead band one, now the dead band is a little bit different. So if we click on dead band 2, I've called it dead band 2 because we're looking at the compared to the last output value, anything that is greater than 2 difference. So 20 plus 2 wouldn't trigger it because that is equal to 2 difference, but 23 should trigger it. So if we click 20, yeah, we get an output. Obviously, nothing to compare it against, so it is going to work. 21, nothing. 22, nothing. 23, there's the output because it's greater than the difference. Again, if we click 20, that's 2 less, greater than 2 less of the difference, so we get an output again. Now this is going all the way through, so this is not just seeing what comes in, this is specifically saying what has passed through this gate. If we change it to the last input value, now that's looking only at what goes in. So that means 20, that'll work because it's the first time, but 21, that's 1 more than 20, so that won't work. And 22 is 1 more than 21, so that won't work. 23, nope. 24, nope. 25, nope. We have to now treat the input value, and every single time we click this, it's getting a new input. So 25, if we go down to 22, that's more than 2, so that'll work. Makes sense when you see it. So yeah, it's really handy for reducing chatter and only reporting meaningful changes. Okay, that's part 1 done. Common nodes and function nodes all wrapped up. These are the everyday essentials. You'll use these in almost every flow you build. In part 2, we'll tackle the network nodes. MQTT, HTTP, WebSockets, TCP, all of that communication layer stuff. And then in part 3, we'll cover parser sequences and storage nodes. So working with CSV files, JSON, XML, batching messages, file operations, all of that stuff. If you found this useful, hit the like button. And if you want to see parts 2 and 3, it's probably worth subscribing and hitting the bell so you don't miss them. Ta-ra!